TV. Joining us today on our special subscriber edition, producers here in the Los Angeles studio.
Awesome.
Eric Davis and Dennis Crow.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
This is your first time on the new RTV.
It is. It is.
Did you enjoy just sitting here while I had to talk for?
I always like watching you talk. So yeah. Is that weird?
That's not true.
Did that get weird?
That's not true.
Did it get weird?
It is weird. All right. So when we do things like this, we like to start off by just talking a little bit about who you are and what you do. That's going to help our subscribers know what kind of questions are best suited. Because everybody wants to know, oh, what about this ship, or what about this game feature? These guys are producers, so they're not designers, and to talk about features and stuff like that. So let's find out a little bit about who you are and what you do. We'll start with Eric first. Eric, who are you and what do you do for Star Citizen?
I don't know. Jared, can you fill that?
Yeah, this actually isn't a question. I've just been wanting to know. We've been working together for like 3 years, and I just finally had you here, and I can finally ask you, what the heck is it that you
do? As Mike made jokes of, my name is Eric Kieron Davis. Thank you for telling everyone that multiple times in the studio.
EKD.
I'm the studio director and production lead here for the U.S. So as a studio director, I guess in a sentence, I'm responsible for the culture, the health, and the output of the entire studio. And then as a producer, I'm also somewhat responsible for that with my new compadre here who joined us not that long ago, Mr. Dennis Crow.
Absolutely.
So that's it in a word, I guess.
Right.
Besides that, I just, drink water.
Okay. Yeah. And Dennis Crow, this is your first time on the show. You've been with the project for a while now, but I know you wanted, when we first came on, you were here, it was like your third day, and I'm like, hey, you want to be on a show? And you're like, hey, let me get my feet wet. Let me get versed in Star Citizen before we appear in the show. It's been like almost a year now.
I joined halfway through last year, yeah. So I didn't want to appear too anxious, but of course I wanted to come on. But I had to make his life easy first. So yeah, I'm Dennis Crow. Obviously, I'm a game producer. I've been doing it a long time. Really, really exciting to be doing it on this project. First game I worked on was on GameCube, so that kind of dates me a little bit. But
wait, what game?
It was Tony Hawk on Nintendo GameCube. So if anyone played Tony Hawk Underground, actually,
yeah, it's a good game.
Yeah, that was my foot in the door. But going on to bigger and better things, and this is I think everyone knows the biggest thing anyone's ever done. So really just super thrilled to be here. It's really nice to the team's been great all throughout last year, and last 6 months have been great, and I think the next 6 months, the next 6 years will be even better. So pleased to be here and happy to make an appearance with you guys. Hopefully more in the future.
All right. So if this is your first RTV, the way this works is we take questions from two places. We have a thread up on Spectrum, which is our bespoke communication platform available on robertsspaceindustries.com when the website is
/Spectrum.
/Spectrum. Basically, you can go to the subscribers forum there, and there'll be a thread there. We've been collecting questions throughout the week for you guys. We also take questions live from the Spectrum chat. Now, to start things off, let's just talk a little bit about what production is. Now, production itself, there's a lot of misconceptions about it. Not only because everybody has their own idea about what a producer does and what production is, but it also actually changes based on the project. When you watch a movie that's produced by Steven Spielberg, you kind of sit there and like, okay, he showed up for like a day and told the guy what to do, and then pieced out. He produces 50 movies a year. But then you see a movie that's produced by George Lucas, and you can tell he's very hands-on in there. So production changes depending on the project. Mm-hmm. How do we approach production? What is production through the lens of Star Citizen?
Absolutely. So production is different on every project, and you'd expect that because the original question is like, what is production? And production is about getting something out. It's about making the product. So you can have artists and engineers and designers working together, and the artist's job is to make amazing art. The designer's job is to create really great experiences, and the programmer's job is to enable it technically to work. But the producer's job is to literally make a product. It's in the word, right? So since every game is different and every movie is different and every, Dr. Dre's a producer, right? So basically they take the art, they take the hard work and the team on what they do and then make it into a product. So it is different everywhere, and it's certainly different here. And I think that's actually what I kind of love about it, because every producer can learn from everyone else. Whereas we deal with people, which are super interesting. We deal with complex projects that are never the same, which is interesting. So for me, the producer's job is to take all the, take the idea that we want to make and bring it through years of hard work from people and have something in the end that resembles what you intended to make at the beginning or is even better. Find the fun, get it out. So yeah, producers' jobs are hard. It's whatever it takes. It's different on every project, but I wouldn't have it any other way. You know, that's why we're here, because it's interesting. You know,
Yeah,
that's the idea.
We've done a couple of these, I think, over the years, and the answer hasn't changed in that it's a mix of project management and like Dennis says, getting the product out and getting it done, or getting it to a space, or getting it to a place that's playable, or again, whatever entertainment you're creating. And then people management, right? Working with people. It's the people that are making all these products. There's not a machine out there churning all this great creative content out. Not yet. It'll come, and I'm sure some people have figured it out with AI, but right now it's still people making this, and it's people that make up Star Citizen, it's people that make up Cloud Imperium Games, and those people are what we like to work closely with and help them do the best thing they can possibly do in confines that are as successful as they can be.
Okay, so let's go a little deeper into that. At first glance, it might seem like you're the guy, you're the producers are the people that just tell the artist, where's your thing? It was due on Tuesday, and this is Wednesday. You don't have. I mean, it's more than just enforcing deadlines. It's more than just the guy that that keeps everybody on track. Let's talk to me a little bit about what your day-to-day is like here at Star Citizen.
Absolutely. So. Again, the producer does what you got to do, right? So, and every project's different. So, if you've got a project where you need to create a certain level, let's say that you wanted to create a level in a game, you need to have a lot of people do their work and then bring it together for a project. So you're starting with an idea or with a concept or something that people want, and you sit in a room, get up on the whiteboard, and wouldn't it be cool if, and you draw something up on the board. And then there's a whole bunch of work that needs to get done to make that wouldn't it be cool if happen. You've got to have features written on that, right? So you got to figure out, okay, wouldn't it be cool if this happened? What are all the features we need to drive that? Okay, so these features are going to have to be given to designers and programmers and artists and QA testers to be able to work together and get out, right? So that's one thing you've got to do, is shepherd it through that process while still keeping the soul and figuring out implementation as you go along. But you may also need to, create cinematics or art or a character or a ship. And that's not really feature development. That's almost like an assembly line. That's almost like a group of people who, know about an art pipeline and can manage that. So that takes a different skill to get it through there, because you're talking to different people and dealing with different issues there. Yep. So then you also have this thing in a game, which makes this so much fun, which is you've got the technical side. Yeah, we're art. Yeah, we're design, but we're also technical. So we've also got to figure out technical solutions in terms of the code and the graphics and the performance and the optimizations, all of these things. And those are purely, engineering challenges and tooling challenges. So a producer who just goes around and just checks off the list is really, maybe sometimes the list needs to be checked off. But in reality, they're taking that wouldn't it be cool if, and then saying, okay, in order to make this happen, what do we need to get done? How do we coordinate all those people together? So at the end, when everyone's delivering it together, it has some resemblance to what that whiteboard said, that many months ago.
Some resemblance. Why did you guys want to become producers?
I don't know. I don't know.
Like we all start from somewhere.
Yeah.
But why was production the avenue of game development that you wanted to go into?
For me, I've always had a creative bone, since I was a kid. And the story I always tell is the artist, Eric the artist, hasn't finished a product in 10, 15 years, but Eric the producer has gotten a lot more done. So for me, it's working around creative people, coming up with interesting, exciting final products and helping shepherd them and work alongside them to get it out into people's hands in whatever fashion that is, whether it's books or websites or whatever it is that's there to engage people and to potentially entertain them or educate them. So I think I originally got into it because it allowed me to work alongside people and also work in a creative environment that got something exciting out in the hands of people to also enjoy it and, in our case, give us feedback and work closely with us. But it's a cool way to work, with creative people and help them understand, what it would take to get something done and kind of play both sides of it. You want your creative people to be very creative and shoot for the moon and blue sky and always go over the top. right? And then we can come and go, okay, well, this is what we could do, this is how we could do it, this is how we could get there, this is what the next steps would be. Maybe we tier it up, maybe we get out the first version, maybe we get out the final version. There's all, all kinds of fun ways to work with people that are creative. But it started for me being creative and understanding that process, no matter what it was, to then move into working alongside people.
Personally, I mean, I got into it from games, obviously, started my first job in games at 21. So basically, I think, when I got in the industry, like a lot of people, we wanted to be the game designer because that was like the sexy position. Like everybody knows the game designers, right? Everybody knows Miyamoto, everybody knows Sid Meier, everybody knows Rob Pardo, these guys. And we think that's the job I want. The game designer is the best job. Then, actually working on some games, you realize that that's kind of, it's not actually how it works. The design is certainly a really critical part of it, but the game is figured out while it's being made. There's an expression that we're trying to find the fun, right? And that's something where you can have the best idea in the world. You can have something that just looks so cool on paper. And then really when you start building it and you start making it real, that's whenever you find the fun. And so for me, if, I love games and I wanted to make games, I felt that a producer got to be there throughout the entire process. The producer got to have the fun in the design process. The producer got to work out those technical challenges with the engineers. And the engineers sometimes surprise you and say, yeah, the thing you thought wasn't possible, well, it is possible. And now you need to change your design because it can get even better. Or an artist will just blow your mind on something. And what I like about it is, as a producer, we go where we're needed. We go what makes the game, whatever it's needed to make this game the best it can be. And then we get to stay with it even after it's released and get the feedback and say, okay, we put this thing out, we were really proud of it, blood, sweat, and tears, all the cliches. But whenever it gets out in the community, you start seeing how people react to it. And then it kind of becomes the community's game because shortly after, everybody on the stream right now knows that, generally speaking, the players know it better than the developers after about 2 weeks.
Yep.
So the producer, though, gets to stick with that and say, okay, we've gotten all this feedback. Let's pick some things that we can do that we can be successful at, because we can't pick everything and be successful.
Yes.
But the producer gets to be there the whole process.
Totally.
And the game, it's fun to make the whole game, not just fun to make a game design document, in my view.
Now, folks who have followed the project for a while know that we always have these big summits, January every year. We come back from the holiday break. We usually pushed a big release in December, and now we come back and we collect all the feedback and we reorganize and plan out the rest of the year. This year's summit was, a lot of it was production focused. I know you guys were out of the office for a while going through the studios. Tell us what that process was like. What was that like?
Yeah, with the distribution of our disciplines, there's a benefit to getting everybody in the same place, which is why I think that term summit became big for many, many years, depending on what it was they were trying to do or where the game was at or what the state was at. On the production side or on the planning side or the project leadership side, it was important for us to get in a room and just solve some problems as quickly as possible. And there's benefits to working remotely, and there's benefits to working together. And I think we had started doing these summits for production specifically last year, and so this was kind of our third one or our next round of it. And it was a great time to evaluate last year what we were successful at, what the team was really doing well, what the team needed more from, how we could support them better, how can we engage our community more, right? Just kind of what is that next iteration, to make this better, not to change for change's sake, but just where, all the information we now have and the experience we now have in this environment, what's the next step and where do we want to take it? And so that was a big focus of the summit for sure. Was and then for me, Dennis had just joined the project a couple 6 months ago, so getting him out in the rest of the studios and working alongside everybody, and I think that was, for me, a small perk to doing it again. But the benefits are very, they're great to set the stage for the year or for the next 6 months, or just to go, okay, we all come together, we've solved these 10 problems, okay, out there and now start making change.
Absolutely. And then, there's so many pubs in the UK that we also find out, I bet, you have the experience here, that the expense report goes through much easier if it's called a summit and not a pub crawl, right? It's a little bit easier, so that was...
Somehow I don't think the UK have any trouble approving an expense report that says pub on it. All right, so one of the big talking points for 2018 so far is how we've restructured our production to hit these quarterly release dates. Before we get into what we did this year, the changes. Let's talk a little bit about what we were doing before so that we can understand these changes more. How were we approaching production before this? What were its strengths and weaknesses? Why was that the way that we were doing things then?
Sure. I mean, I think we should clarify it's not a reorg or a restructure. Those generally have negative connotations, so I want to make sure that's clear. That's not at all what happened. It was more of a look at what the strengths of we've been doing for the last couple of years. You know, as we've scaled up in certain departments and as we brought in certain talent, it was now about going, what could we divide this in to make sense, all right, to make this go to the next stage. And we realized, and Crow could talk even more to this, Dennis Crow. I tend to call him Crow. We have a couple Dennises, so Crow.
I think I'm Crow on the spectrum.
Great,
so
he's Crow. Was, what need to be based around the features to allow for fast iteration, and what need to be based around pipelines, and I think Dennis can even speak more to that. But this was building on last year. We'd already done some of this at the same time last year of going, let's get people into strike teams or into goal teams, or there's all these various production-y words to use in this same idea. Get people together, let them work together, work quicker, and just as the team has shifted and the responsibilities kind of ebbs and flows as we bring in talent in certain areas or in certain teams, we have to constantly evaluate this stuff to make sure it works well. Like, I think back to the point of the expense report, and as far as that joke goes, there's a human element that I was mentioning at the beginning of this. These are humans making this stuff. And the more we work together, the more we work alongside each other, the more we know each other's strengths and weaknesses. And there's, I've mentioned this multiple times when you're forming any kind of team, we're in this phase now of performing. We know what people can do. We don't question where that information should go or what part of the team should work on it. Now it's about doing it, getting it done, iterating quickly on it. And we'll go through that, I think, frequently. We do it all often, but I'm sure next year we'll go through that again based on what we learned this year.
A continuing evolution.
Yeah, for sure. And as the product evolves and as we get more out and we're working really close with the community, they get more content. And 3.0 is a big one for us to go, look at all this content and how it all came together, what's the next steps for us, and what we can kind of, a lot of the R&D we've been doing, which is really what a lot of that stuff is, that's people are playing is R&D. If this was any other game, people wouldn't be playing that stuff. That would be just us going, oh, cool, this looks really fun. Okay, right, but don't tell anybody yet. But look how fun this is. Okay, there's a lot of broken stuff, and so we get to R&D alongside the community. It's really unique. It's a lot. It's a live game, but we're learning alongside them for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, just to echo that, I would agree. I think one of the things that we would probably want to say though is it's not necessarily a production change. It's a development change really. And again, it was not necessarily a reorg. What it is understanding where we're at in development and fitting how we work to the work we need to do. So it's not about we have these ideas of how we want to make our game. It's here's right now where the game is at. This is what's working really well. This is on all the research that we did and the experimentation that we did and all the things that we have made and shipped. We've learned a lot. The project's in a different stage. And so when the project's in a different stage, you should say, okay, are there things that we can do now that it's in a different stage that more match what we're ready to do? So, we know how to make a ship. We know how to make these characters. We know how to make cinematics. We know how to make these features. So now that we know that, we don't have to experiment. We don't have to be in the experimental phase that was required. To make something new, there's no roadmap. There's no manual for how to make this game, right? So we had to figure that out. We had to research that, come up with all these ideas, try out things, try things and then you get a result and that's not what you expected. So try something else. Okay, that's a little bit closer. So now that we've tried a bunch of things and we kind of know what works and what doesn't, and now we have a base of knowledge and we have a great tool set, we have a great engine and all these type of things, the project's just in a different phase where it's okay. Now we're ready to we know the features we need, so we need to reorganize how we develop, or we need to have people work more closely together on, this half the room, you guys can huddle up and go do features, and let's organize into some groups so you guys can kind of work together and just go hit these features up. The guys over here, you guys need to be producing a ton of exceptional quality content, and you need to be doing it in a very streamlined way where everybody knows what's going on. Everybody can see what's going on. And then the guys over here, we know what features we want. We know what content we want. We have a tremendous amount of it already made. So now what we need to do is evolve our tools to support all that. So you couldn't have done all this in those three groups in terms of what each person needs to do until you had done the research. Because if you just come up with that piece of paper and you say, we're gonna execute this piece of paper, so let's just all go do it, well, now we're following a plan. And the idea of Star Citizen or any great game is not how closely can you follow the plan. The plan is the start. It's about making a good game and learning and adapting as you go. This is an adaptation as we go.
Yeah.
A pretty regular evolution that happens in a lot of game development. You have to go through then to get to where you are now.
Totally. Yep. Absolutely.
So let's talk about what we are doing now, though. In ATV and studio reports, we throw out a lot of terms like Scrum and Agile and 2-week sprints and stuff like that.
The
Take us through
buzzwords.
that. Yeah, take us through that. What is Scrum? What is Agile? What are the 2-week sprints? What are we doing now?
Absolutely. Well, every time I mention the name, they send me a check. So just keep doing that. That's why I came here. No, it's good. But basically, so here's what it's all about. For some things so again, it's about matching what we need to do with how we're going to do it. You use a hammer to hammer a nail, right? So we have these features that we want to build. So whether it's character customizer, or whether it's the service beacon, the distress signaling, or whether it's improvements we want to make to the PMA, or any number of features, and people know them, we put them live. Those features, we generally know what they are, but we don't know if that's a month of work and then it'll be fun, or if it's 6 weeks of work that it'll be fun, or 7 weeks. It's really hard to schedule fun. So what we say is, let's get a group of people together who know it. Let's give them 2 weeks to go run off and do stuff and try it out. And then at the end of 2 weeks, they have to show us what they've done. And we, Chris is in the room, we have these great meetings where we, every Scrum team gets, meets with him and talks about their feature and shows it, and all the directors are there. Mm-hmm. So basically, we can't schedule when it's going to be fun, but we know the more cracks we get at it.
Yeah.
The closer we'll get at it, and it'll become fun over time. And then any team can only ever really get 2 weeks. Like if someone doesn't have the greatest idea, not all of our ideas are great. Mm-hmm. If they're trying something and they get a result and it's not exactly what fits with the game, whatever, they tried something and that's good and they're pushing, then we can bring them back every 2 weeks. So really for feature development, we don't know exactly how to make it. So that's what Scrum's about. It's about getting a small group of people together, a couple programmers, designer, a dedicated tester, an artist, if they need an audio guy, bringing them in, letting them go for 2 weeks, operate a little bit like a startup maybe, so maybe like Old Days LA, right? Make a whole bunch of Old Days LA, little tiny teams, and let them go for a couple weeks, bring them together. And I don't know if they'll be done with a feature like character custom. When we began this, we didn't know if character customizer was going to take 3 sprints. And again, sprints are 2 weeks each. So we didn't know if it was going to be 6 weeks or if it was going to be 8 weeks. But what we did know is if we gave them a quarter to do it in, so this comes back to our quarterly schedules, that we would be better each iteration on it. And by the end of that, we would have something that we would feel pretty good about. And so in terms of matching the development, that makes sense for our features. Mm-hmm. It makes a ton of sense. We get things out to the community. So that seemed to fit this stage of the project. It also seemed to fit the culture of this company, which I'm learning about and I love, and it's it's a band of pirates and it's fantastic. But the other thing is, if we've got to make, and I'm going to throw out a number here, this number is not exactly correct. If we've got to make 200 characters, right? And let's say we're halfway down with them, but we've got to make a huge amount of characters. Well, we wouldn't ask them to work in 2 week increments, right? Like it'd be really hard to write up a narrative bio of a character and figure out gameplay design of it and then get a concept and then model it and then rig it and then set it up and then go get the animation done, then go get the AI done, then go implement it in game. You can't do that in 2 weeks. There's no way you could fit that. So it's not about, oh, Scrum is great, it's a buzzy word, let's use it for them too. They actually all know what they need to do. What they need is the time and context. So what they need to do is say, we're going to be working on these characters in the priority order, and we're all going to work on them, and we're all going to be same team, we're all going to be thinking about the same list of characters that we need to put out this year. And we're all going to basically work more together. We're going to work on unified priorities. I was making fun of the Chipotle, almost like a Chipotle burrito line, where people go step by step through it. But what's great about that is it's super clear what goes on. And also, you get your burrito faster than if you had to wait for it for someone to take your order. But that kind of work fits that kind of style fits that kind of work. And then when you go to your departments who are making tech, that's a different style of work. So what we've done this year is said, you know, we just like those Scrum teams, the more cracks we have at it, the more iterations that we have, the better we'll be. It's like anything else. The more times you practice something, the better you'll be at it. So last year, we had a lot of stuff we were researching, a lot of things we were trying, a lot of things that we wanted to do. And so we said, okay, here's a big group of work we want to get done. And we went through and we got that work done, and we got a result out of it, which was a whole lot of really great features, but it was really hard to estimate, and it ended up, you know, we got the work done, but since you can't schedule fun, basically we came out end of last year. This year we said it would be more effective because we get more iterations in. Imagine if we had 4 releases in the same time period of 1. Now all of a sudden we're doing 4 experiments instead of 1, or, you know, 4 practices instead of 1. And we time box it instead. And we say, whatever we can get done in this time period, we're gonna send out. And then we're gonna do it again, and then we'll send it out. And perhaps the first one or the second one, we're gonna learn things. We're not gonna maybe get everything done that we thought we would, you know. We'll get more done than in some areas and less in others, but we'll learn each time. And the community will learn, and you guys out there will learn it also, that, you know, what does it mean to basically say, oh, we're gonna have these regular releases coming out, and some things won't be done. Some things will be farther than we ever thought they could be, because we'll have learned. But really what it is we know the more cracks we have at, the more times we can send things out, the better. And so in order to enable that, in order to be able to release things 4 times a year, we had to really say, okay, we've got to shrink everything that we did from the I have an idea on the whiteboard to it's in the game and working. We had to shrink that down to basically from a whole year into a quarter. And in order to do that, we have to break the features up smaller. In order to do that, we have to find ways to work better together, which goes back to the new tooling and kind of the Scrum and Agile, and these are some of the things we can get into for sure. But basically, everything that we're doing is to make the game better. The more cracks we have at it, the more iterations, that'll make the game better. You know, we'll find the fun sooner. And in order to make these quarterly releases worthwhile, we need to make sure that, you know, they're an asset to the team, and the team's working in a great way. But it's going to be really interesting. I mean, I'm excited that we'll be releasing, you know, on time, which is a really great thing. And we're going to learn a lot, and curious to see what people think about it. But I think overall it'll be a positive.
Totally.
All right. One of the things that we put out this year in line with this was our new public roadmap. Now, the public roadmap is another evolution of something we were doing last year, which was our production schedule. Right. Before we talk about the public roadmap, let's talk about that production schedule we were doing last year. Sure. Why did we do that to ourselves? Why did we decide let's open this process up and show the community everything that we're working on, everything that we're shooting for? Why did we do that, and what was that process like, having to put that together and update that every week?
Sure. Well, the why is because, you know, we're working alongside the community, so there's no question that the more we can get out and the more we can share, the more we can discuss and have feedback on, the more everybody can see kind of where we're going and how we're doing it, what we're getting done, because it's, you know, we're on this journey together for all intents and purposes. We are interwoven into one, so the more that we can work together, the better, right? So that was the intent, and the intent with the current roadmap is the same idea. The manual nature to it was definitely because of just how what we organized some of our schedules. It was still in Jira, and it was still in Microsoft Project, things we've talked about in previous production stuff. When we built that schedule, you got to see it. It was still happening in that vein. We just weren't capturing it in an automated way per se last year. So there was some manual nature to making sure we got the information from the right place to the next right place, and there was always intentions to do what we did this year. It's just we prioritized our overall developer work and our time. Yes. And so things shifted around, and so it stayed somewhat more manual than we probably all would have liked to have been, and then we shifted things around to be more burned. Like we got to the 3.0, it made sense to talk even more granular about burn down and get that going, and Chris was really passionate, just like all of us, like, how do we keep sharing this? How do we keep this engagement? How do we make sure here's where we're going, and here's what we're trying to do, stay on this journey with us. And so that brought us, like all iterations, into this new roadmap that we have this year, working closely with Turbulent and our partners over there, really coming up with a solution that allowed for that now intimate data, live data is right there, and has those checks and balances, and we can share that conversation. So yeah, it was just kind of the first, again, like it was the first pass, first pass of it. We hadn't, from my understanding, we hadn't, it's been over 3 years here now, we hadn't done it in my history of sharing that level of detail. And Chris was really adamant about it, and we all got on the same page about it at the end of last year, end of the year before, and into the new year. And we really wanted to get that in front of everybody the best we could. Try to bring you along with our timelines and keep you up to date on things, and for good or for bad, keep our skeletons out there and keep showing you this is what we're trying to do to make the best damn game we can.
So now we have this new RSI Roadmap integrated on the website. The question that comes up repeatedly is this really what's going on behind the scenes?
Sure.
Talk to us about how that process works. I know you work a lot on updating that every week.
Yeah.
How does the public roadmap actually reflect what's going on?
And to be quickly clear, last year all the stuff we sharing was really what was going on
Yeah,
as well. That's because it's not, we don't say it was. It was still, we weren't like, well, let's just say this. It was like, here's what we're planning, here's what the team's trying to achieve. So last year was the same thing, but go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to make sure.
I mean, so it's funny that we talked about the production summit before. That's where we built it. I mean, we knew, we talked to the guy, obviously we talked to, Chris and Aaron, talked to a whole bunch, everybody, Carl, all these, Sandy, everybody, and we said, we want to put this out there. We want to figure out a way to do it. How do we make that happen? And it was funny because it's a hard thing, because actually I've never seen a AAA or a quadruple A almost game do anything like that. And then we put it out, and a couple other games have followed, but theirs isn't live. What I can tell you is when we were in the production summit and we were in Winslow in the UK, and that came in, we kind of were forced into having live data because there's no other way to make that. Like we couldn't have done that other than saying, okay, we have to put a live schedule out. And so what we did is say, okay, what are all the features in development, and let's get them up on screen and put them into columns, and like, wow, okay. Is that possible? It might be possible. And then we kind of went feature, this is exactly, we went feature by feature and said, okay, how many tasks are here? Where does it look like? Okay, if those guys didn't work on anything else, they could get that done. If they were never blocked, they could get that done. And then we went to the next one. Okay, well, if these guys had to work on that and they were never blocked, and they could get that done. And we went piece by piece. And in some areas, we were probably pretty aggressive in what we could get done. In other areas, I say we were pretty conservative. Where we said, we want time to polish, we want time to make it right. There are things on there that definitely are really exciting. And I think I'm not gonna say they're stretch goals. I think we will hit them, or they wouldn't be on there. But essentially, the only way to make that was to say, okay, what's in progress now? What are things that we need to come next? What are things that are dependent upon each other? And let's get it up on screen. Let's see how many tasks and stuff is remaining. Then let's call people in and say, hey, is this everything? And then no, we added more things to it. Yeah. And we very quickly over that week, it only took like about 3 or 4 days to build once we had, obviously Turbulent was great, but to actually build that into our project management, to actually power that, 3 or 4 days we had it, and then we were like, can we really get this done? But looking at it, if that group of people could focus on that goal, yeah, they could do it. But it would require production making sure they could stay focused. It would make production require us to make sure that they didn't get blocked, that they had regular reviews from all the art directors, tech directors, Chris. But if they got all that support, they could get it done. But then it was on us to make sure that they could get that support. And that was what we needed to do at that stage of the project. And that's why we had to get into Scrums, and that's, so we had a problem and the tool fit the problem. So really it was built over 3 or 4 days. We kind of update it. We have this little checklist that goes around. We update it on Wednesdays and Thursdays. As a live went out about an hour ago. Yeah. And it is absolutely accurate. It's pulling, you guys know Jira, there's a Jira API. We're pulling a Jira API into a website. That's what's going on. Yeah. And that little picture that you see on the website is actually, if anyone here uses Jira in their job, that's actually an attachment on the Jira issue. It's how it works. Yeah. And Benoit at Turbo's been fantastic. And
yeah. And I think to further clarify, the schedule wasn't made in 3 days. When we started this, we didn't know what we were doing, and 3 days later we made it.
For sure.
This was just allowing the live.
I was getting to that.
We had the connection points that had to to be created in Turbulent. Spent a lot of time on their end making sure the platforms interact with each other, and like you said, pulling from custom APIs. And then we really just added a custom field, a public field in Jira, which there's all kinds of really cool customization that we put in place so that it would know what to pull and what not to pull. And like we communicate on the caveats, we intentionally don't have certain things on there based on where they are in production. So there's other things than just that stuff on there. But it was a good exercise to take exactly what we built on last year and take our data that we already are managing and then port it in here, and now we've got these great one-to-one connection points that we can again interact. It's also been really healthy to interact in a very open way with the community on that's 3.2. That's definitely still on track for 3.2. I would say this internally, but now I'm on camera telling you that because we still feel confident about it, right? And it's a lot for a nice dialogue that I know I appreciate, especially with the most recent studio update we did. It was nice to, in the past it would be like, that character update's coming, the next one I know it is, we've talked about it's internal, but now I can say, that roadmap you're looking at, that's still the aim, right? And you'll see if it shifts up or shifts down based on whatever comes up.
And also, I mean, I think people will get this because we've all worked on projects. We all went to college where it's like, you don't really, you work on your term paper, but you don't really work on it until last week, right? Like, I'm working on it, I'm researching, I'm doing web surfing to kind of, whatever, but you really work on it that last week. Yeah. And you really get in that focus in that zone, right? When you gotta perform, you perform. So to a degree, it's always easier to be like, well, maybe we could get it out by the end of the month, right? But I don't want that pressure, so we'll just push it off a little bit more, So what this is doing, because we can, reduce scope to get it out. I mean, that's the number one. Like we're time boxing it, but in a way, it's kind of like a forcing function, or it kind of not keeps us honest, but keeps us where it's like we know we have to get this out in some form. Now, we don't have to get every bell and whistle onto here, but we've got to get something out that is real, that solves a problem, that is actually a fun experience, and then we can build on it. But to a degree, by kind of putting that stake in the ground and making it public, I mean, I think to a degree it clarifies for us because it's out there, we're working hard on it, we're going to get it out there, and it kind of takes the decision away from us of like, well, what are we going to do? It's like, well, we're going to stick to what we said we were going to do. We're going to keep the team focused. We're not going to try to pull them off something. So I actually think the public roadmap actually helps us internally as well.
Yeah. So we've been peppering questions from both the Spectrum thread where we're collecting them throughout the week, and then of course on live chat. The question from the live chat that's basically it's just coming through over and over again. Does quarterly release schedule mean that we're actually going to get something at the end of quarter one? We're actually going to get something at the end of quarter two? What can you tell us about that?
I mean, that is absolutely the intention. We wouldn't say it if we didn't truly believe it internally. That is 100% our goal. We are aiming for end of quarter releases. So, March is end of quarter one. We're aiming and we're pushing and we're challenging and we're adjusting, we're shifting, and we're structuring it to make that make sense. Even again, you start with a plan and you end with a result, and those things you make. I've never worked on any project where things didn't shift. When I was working in books, it was the same thing. It's like we're at 600 pages. Clearly, we're not putting that out. Let's cut that down. You always have these internal conversations. So yeah, that is absolutely our internal intention across no matter who you talk to in the team.
Yeah.
Another question from, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would say absolutely, yeah.
Somebody in the live chat asked a question that I've actually wondered. Why is it called a stand-up meeting? Why can't people sit down?
That's interesting. That's an interesting. I think there's a lot of science behind people, and I think there's a lot of really great readings out there about how we function as humans. Some are classical common wisdom, some are new agey, trendy software devy type of things. But there's an interesting dynamic that occurs in not just people's brains, but also in the impact of that conversation when people stay standing up. If you stand up versus sitting down, you tend to do things quicker. Your legs start getting tired. Your brain functions a little bit differently. And it also reflects the intention of what that is supposed to be. So if I stand up and I say it's a 15-minute stand-up, it's a pretty common thing to do at the beginning of the day, beginning of the week, beginning of a project, beginning of a feature, whatever it is. It's because we are getting in a room, we are all going either over what our blockers are, what's coming up next, what we're working on, anything in our way, to get in and get out. Right? Because people complain about meetings. Oh, I got meetings. And when you sit down and you have your coffee and then you relax and then, it's still all work related. It could just, the goal, it depends on the goal of the meeting, right? There's even science behind taking someone out of their natural environment, which is maybe the same meeting room we meet in every single Monday for the last 3 years and going, we're going to go outside and do it now, right? It sounds super new agey and kind of some of these new software companies, but it's the same thing, right? The reason you have work lunches, right? It's the same thing. Your brain goes through a change. There's all kinds of unique things and fun things that happen to the human existence when you do these things. And there's and back to being able to work with people. It's fun to kind of help engage different parts of their brain and engage different parts of the team to do things in a potentially different, unique way.
I can attest to the environmental factor. As I did live theater for 25 years, and one of the earliest mistakes almost any actor makes is you memorize your lines sitting down, and then you go to rehearsal and you have to stand up, and it's all gone.
That's right.
It's because your physical orientation has now changed. Your brain got it's all those little subconscious cues. You sit down again, like, let me sit down and do this, and you've got all your lines, and you stand up, it's like they're gone.
Yeah.
So you learn that when you have to memorize your lines, you do it standing in your bedroom.
Totally.
Because your environment matters and those kind of things.
And I think
when
we're
you're doing live theater for the stream, I'd love to see it.
How is this not? This is live theater. But I think that's when and also there's some key, I made this joke in the ATV that went out yesterday, but nomenclature is so insanely important, right? Like, if you talk to some processes and practices out there that people have been doing for hundreds of years, or they've been building houses or rocket engines or whatever the case may be, once you've established a pipeline and nomenclature and then you all are speaking that same language, there's no questions in it anymore. So when I say the word stand up right now, everybody watching, I think we know what that means, or we know what we're going to say. If I say, hey, everyone on the team, it's time to stand up, sometimes people literally stand up from their desk and they do the round robin and they sit back down. But it's the same thing with our vehicle pipeline. It's called ships. It's the ship pipeline because we were making ships, right? Back in our Arena Commander, that was the goal. And so now we have ground vehicles. Should we change that nomenclature? Or when I say flight prep, everyone knows what I mean. And now with especially ship shape, you're training everyone out there in the world to know what that means. Yeah. And I would have wanted to go more into that on the studio update, but I'm like, all right, you don't want to hear me talk about nomenclature on this thing. Let's just show stuff. But the nomenclature of flight prep, once it was established years ago, everyone that comes in as a new employee, they get taught this way. They get to say this thing. When I say it in an email, hey, that ship's in flight prep, questions, there are no questions. If I say it's kind of towards the end, what does that mean? Does that mean he hits UVs? Does it mean the damage set up? Does it mean VFX is in? Does it mean sound's done? When does that happen? Like, the reason you see these beautiful pipelines being created and then iterated on and changed is once we all are looking at the same map or we're going the same way, you take so many questions out, right? Once I know what my job is, I know what part of the pipeline is important to me, I know when it happens, I know where it's going to come. It's the Chipotle question, right? But how we still allow for creativity and for improvements, right? That's the challenge. So yeah, I think, I don't know how I got on the stand-up question, but nomenclature, it's so incredibly important when you say that word and you start saying it over and over again that people are like, oh, I get it. I don't have to ask what that means. When Jared says, hey, we're going to do reverse verse, can you be on it? There's a general sense of what the show is now. We know what this is. People know what to expect from it. We know what to come in from it. Do we want to change it? RTV now means we're flying.
Yeah, we did it a week ago, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's right.
I had no idea what we were doing.
No, we didn't know what we were doing, but over the years of reverse the verse, what is that intention, even though it shifted? It's the same idea.
Yeah, and at a basic level, nobody likes status meetings, right? Status meetings are really bad. Everyone, no one's like, oh, I go to work, I love how many meetings we have. Generally, that's not the thing. And
for Meeting Bill, it is. Meeting Bill loves meetings.
Well, that's great. That's.
I don't know who Meeting Bill is, but
we're comfortable here, right? The three of us sitting down here at the table, we're sitting down, we're comfortable, right? So we can park here, and we can camp here, we can just hang out here. Well, if people don't like meetings, then if you don't sit down, it goes back to it's not comfortable. So go there, have just the part of the meeting you need, which is what Eric had said, which is I'm working on this UI bit. I need a programmer to hook this up, and that's blocking me. But after that, I'll be ready to go on my next task.
Totally.
Why do I need to sit down and then look at a PowerPoint look at a PowerPoint up on the screen like you don't? It's this is what I'm working on, and I'm not blocked. This is what I'm working on, I am blocked, and then let me get back to developing the game.
Doing it, yep.
Another question that's been flooded from the live chat: does the roadmap cover everything, or only just the big things?
That's an interesting question. I'm pretty sure you can click that little caveats button and then get that answer. But you want us to say it? We could say it too.
They're asking.
No. I think, like I mentioned before, the goal with the roadmap is to show as much of it as we possibly can that makes sense for what we're trying to release for each upcoming release. No, it does not show everything, as we explained in the caveats. And like I said, I think even the ATV, and then just a moment ago, it depends on where the features are at. It depends on where the asset's at. It depends on how much R&D is left. The tough thing, and anyone that's kind of worked in a creative project where there is prototyping or R&D necessary, whether it's a game or whether you're prototyping a new way to do something online or you're prototyping a new way to tell a story. It doesn't matter. There's so many unknowns that other than saying, can we do it in 6 weeks? There's no other more management or production you can do in it because you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. But the moment you know, that's when we can really, right? Like once we discovered the pipeline for ships, we can keep going back to that. Even though we've tweaked things over the years, we know what that is. We know when we bring a new ship artist in what they're going to do. We know there's so few unknowns. So no, it doesn't have everything. It has a good chunk of stuff, but doesn't intentionally have everything.
That we feel confident that we can include in,
Correct.
in these
Correct.
years.
Yep.
I think that's the big key. Is the stuff that we feel confident we can get out, and there are definitely things on there that are ambitious beyond what most other people would be comfortable sending out. That's why some of the other ones that came out weren't necessarily that way. But you can also think of, imagine that there's a feature that we weren't as confident with, but really could be cool if it would work. Like it's almost like a very R&D project where it's like, it's a 1 out of 10 chance this is going to work.
Yeah.
But if it does, oh my God, it's great. But that kind of project, if you analyze it too much and you try to break it all down, it can kind of die. Sometimes ideas are fragile.
Yeah.
So I think on the roadmap, it's a really great suite of features that we feel pretty confident we can get out. I'd say very confident we can get out. There's definitely stretch stuff on there. There's definitely ambitious stuff. But you wouldn't want every brand new idea to be subject to that level of scrutiny because it wouldn't be best for the game in the long term.
There's a reason we call it game development, not game construction. It's the process of exploring ideas, of figuring out ideas, of exploring what will work and what won't work.
That's right.
There's a lot of roads we go down that never go anywhere.
That's right.
Something like that.
That's right.
So it's all part of the process. Okay, another big question from the chat here. What can you tell us about the possibility of an eventual Squadron 42 roadmap?
It's a great question. It is still something we are considering. And as soon as we have something we're ready to share, I think that you'll see that in the future.
Okay, very diplomatic. Good job.
And I hear a laugh from behind the wall.
Yeah.
Thanks,
JJ
Tyler.
thought it was
JJ
amusing.
thought it was
All right, so what else do we got here? Now, the roadmap, when people expand the roadmap, and a lot of people, we run into this a lot. They just go to the roadmap and they just look at it. You can actually click on many of the items and they expand into further detail.
Right.
Some of that further detail is the level of steps. Now, something like the Reclaimer says like 38 out of 57 steps.
Yep.
What kinds of things constitute those steps?
For sure.
And why do we show them as steps and not like a full list of all of them?
Absolutely. So here's just the way that it's structured, and so I'll explain these terms a little bit, but I don't want to get too far in the weeds in terms of like I'll use a little bit of jargon here, but not too much. But anybody who's worked in Scrum will get this right away. So if you see something on there like the service beacon, right? That's what's known as an epic, which essentially is a group of features or a group of user stories, or a group of things that come together as kind of a nice feature that kind of could come out together and be something that's well-rounded. So whenever you take a look at that and you see one of the cards there, or you see one of the features with that number on it, you're looking at an epic. You actually are looking at an epic. So within that, we've got that number where it says a certain number of tasks completed. So we use tasks because it's something everybody knows. If we were on there to put like, 9 out of 12 user stories completed, it'd be like, well, what's a user story? And then we have to get a whole conversation about, why we use user stories for features where we might not use them for something else. Yeah. But essentially, everyone gets a task. It's something you've got to do. Basically, that tells, if you see that number, that, I forgot what you said, that's 34 out of 47 things to do, things done.
38
things
out of
remaining.
57.
Yeah.
The numbers I made up out of my head.
Exactly, but that's also not going to be all the polishing and necessarily all the things that will come up in bug fixing, because we can't always predict the future.
Yeah.
But we do know on something that we've got a lot of work to do, and we just kind of bundle them under tasks. But they're, those are epics, and there's user stories under there, and there's tasks under there. So that's exactly what's driving it. But that's kind of why it's left a little bit vague, and some people would get it if we put user stories, but it might be a little hard to explain to everybody.
Yeah, I think on the Reclaimer specifically, again, not going to weeds, but there's some animation stuff left, and there's a couple less pieces left. It's a pretty big ship with a lot of moving parts.
Big ship.
With a lot of moving parts. So that, and again, besides going to the polish phase that we'll be getting to shortly.
You just introduced a phrase I don't think that we've shared with the community before, user story.
Absolutely.
Give me an example, just a vague example of what a user story would be.
Exactly, and this I think is actually something real simple that that I think a lot of people kind of overlook, or they think it's, but there's some real power in it. So user story is kind of a building block of Scrum. Like everybody knows these things. Essentially, it's a way of describing what you want to do, right? So an example of this would be, as a user, I want, for the character customizer, as a user, I want a character customizer so I can customize my character, in Persistent Universe. That would be a big user story, and basically what that means is, as a user, so as a player, I'm speaking as a player, I want this feature, so I get this benefit. Versus saying character customizer and having it as a task. Now, character customizer task makes a lot of sense to people who are on the design side, but it doesn't necessarily make sense to everyone who has to touch it. It kind of goes back to the part of why we love production, because we get to interface with so many people. So if we have a user story, as a user, I want a character customizer, so I can customize my character. Seems like you're overstating things, like why are you doing that? But imagine this, so as we start working on that user story, we start breaking it down into smaller stories. So imagine if you said, as a Star Marine player, I want my character customizer in Star Marine, so it matches my PU character. I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense, right? But if we were gonna write that as a task, it would be like, transfer PU character customizer to Star Marine, right? That could be like how the task was written. That doesn't tell you the intent or what the player wants to get out of it in the end. And when we come into the office and we're doing all this work, it's not just to get tasks done. Nobody on the stream, nobody playing the game, says, oh yeah, they're working on even more tasks than last month. No, it's about the objectives we can deliver. So by writing a user story, you make sure that everyone working on it sees what the objective is, and we're all working towards that goal of, we're not adding we're doing that whole user story about Star Marine so that people's PU character matches their Star Marine character. So whenever it's in QA, or it's in art, or in any of the disciplines that it's in, we all know the goal, and we're working towards the same goal. So that's why you would write it in a user story. You also write it to annoy Chris, because he doesn't always love him as much, but he's coming around, I feel.
And just to confirm, folks, he was using the character customizer in Star Marine as an example.
Yes.
This is not him sitting here confirming that.
Not
that we're adding
confirmed.
that to Star Marine.
Not confirmed.
Using it as an example. All right, we have time for one more question before we go. We're actually on OT. We're actually on OT already.
Whoa,
there
we
we go.
hit overtime.
Yep. Last question from the chat here. How are the objectives for a release decided? 3.1, how do we decide what goes into 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4? Is it mainly based on time? Is it we need this feature before we need this feature?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of aspects to that, right? So the project leadership group for the project, Persistent Universe, as well as with Chris, kind of go, here's, with 3.0, we laid so much awesome foundation for so many great things. And so now what do we build on in that, and where are we at with each of those things, right? So if mining was in R&D phase, but we've already figured out how to do it, now it's just about executing on it, great, here's the task it'll take now that we know more about it and when we can get it done. Does that work for Project Lead? Is that a good time to roll it out? So yeah, it's based on complexity, it's based on when that quarterly release ends in the world, based on what we've established as it would take to make it. Also based on, what would be all good coming in together. That's why you see some of those features planned to come in together. Object container streaming, is everyone knows, is a big feature that we're working on the technical side, which will allow us to add more content to allow for better streaming in and out of as you move in through these large aspects and areas of assets. So yeah, there's so many myriad of dependencies. It's not just a grab bag of like, I kind of want mining right around September, because that's when it gets colder out in certain areas of the world. And so I feel like I'd want to sit down and do a lot of mining. Does that feel good to you? Do you feel good with that, Crow? Yeah, let's do that. Maybe that's a factor, but that's a tiny factor. That's a real small one. But yeah, there's all sorts of aspects that go into
Gotta have
station
mining in the
phase.
stores before Christmas.
That's right.
Oh, there you go.
That's right. Before Santa Jared comes back out, I want him to be able to carry around his, some kind of mining thing. I don't know. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's about it, guys. Thank you so much for being on the show. Any final thoughts you want to share with the community before we let you go?
Yeah, I mean, what I would always say is, first of all, thank you guys so much. It's been a blast joining this crazy endeavor and meeting so many great people here inside the community, in the wider community, backers up and down. It's just been really fun. One thing I would definitely say though is that roadmap, we're if you guys got feedback on that, and if you guys have some cool ideas, like what we're hearing them. I mean, obviously we built it. We're iterating on that as well, but definitely like the feedback on that's really great. And if you see me in Spectrum, say hi. And
Yep. We've already got a backlog of things we're going to do with it as well. So you'll see more updates to that, because it's everything that we wanted, again, pie in the sky. We tiered it up. We got our first version out, and there's some stuff already on our backlog that we want to do to improve that experience and that engagement and to make sure that's super clear. And then I think for me it's just thank you to the subscribers, because we can't do these shows and be this communicative, which is after all this time, still an incredibly unique and awesome experience. No matter what we're doing and how we're doing it, it's always amazing to do it alongside you guys. So, and then obviously the community at large and backers. So we can continue to do this and work with some great people and all the people that make up Cloud Imperium Games and Star Citizen and Squadron 42.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to be here, guys. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have the wrap up and. Yeah, we've seen the show before. We'll see you in a minute.
Thanks, everybody.